Welcome to Biohacker's live show. I'm so totally ready for Corona virus. I don't know. Here we go. All right, so is everyone ready for the pandemic? I mean, some people have mistaken the corn beer for the flu virus, but we are not. I think there is a lot of need for people to get their hands on information that is relevant, truthful, and based on factual science. And there's a lot of fear-mongering going on right now in terms of, taking those glasses off. There's a lot of fear-mongering from World Hysteria Organization on the fact that 70% of world population might be getting the coronavirus. And we've been doing the research, and yeah, you probably could get it. But what is important is how do you prepare so that if you contract the virus, it is not going to cause a lot of damage to you or your family. So that's kind of the topic for today for the Biohacker's Flu webinar. My name is Teemu Arina, and I'm one of the co-authors of the Biohacker's Handbook. And here in studio, I have also my colleagues, Dr. Olli Sovijärvi. Welcome.
Thank you.
You have a pretty cool outfit as well.
I want to protect myself, but this makes living a bit more complicated.
Right on. And
maybe I should have a drink.
I think you should definitely have a drink, and our friend here as well, Mr. Jaakko Halmetoja.
Welcome, Jaakko.
You have a pretty cool outfit as well. But you know, your mask is not fully protecting your nose at the moment. It's somehow on your,
I think so
forehead. So here you go.
That's why I have the best protection, because I'm from the medical field, and therefore I don't want to do anything with a corona except this beer. Okay.
Wonderful. So how have you guys been so far with the viral threat?
Even 5 minutes in this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting times, but also I see that this is a huge possibility for people and the world, and to see how we act as a whole. You know, how can we spread the information which is actually correct, and also diminish unnecessary fear, but just based on facts. And what we are going to do here in this webinar is how you can actually protect yourself without putting too much energy and strain towards it. But the key here is how to build your immune system. I'm glad that I don't have to wear this anymore.
Yeah, I actually have a photocatalysis device right here. So what this device is doing is actually destroying our bacterial and viral pathogens in the air, as well as degrading formaldehyde and benzenes. And this is something I travel with. I use this with my computer when I'm on a boat, on a train, on an airplane. And basically it's creating kind of a bubble around me in which there is no pathogens, and if there is any kind of droplets in the air, they're not reaching me because of the turbulence around this. So there's a lot of ways how we can protect ourselves, and today we're going to dive deep. It's going to be a lot of material in the next couple of hours. So welcome to the Biohacker's Flu webinar, and slide it.
Some slides on.
Ei sieltä. Yeah. Vajat sen lähteen sieltä miksi. Okay, cool. Yeah, we have actually our technician is right now remote because he's contracted the virus, although that's not the coronavirus but the influenza. So I have some help in the studio here from Yasmin. Thank you very much, Yasmin, for joining us as well. So today we're gonna dive deeper into the flu epidemic and what you can potentially do. We have special reporter Siim also joining us, sharing some of his knowledge on autophagy and how we can protect ourselves with dietary interventions. He's joining us remote.
Olli, me and Jaakko are live on studio. And basically, Jasmin, you can change between like occasionally. Okay, cool. So this is live studio stuff. So we are launching the Biohacker's Flu Guide. After this webinar, you will be receiving a link through which you can join in to the PDF download of the book, and there's also an extra materials page for it. But for now, this is also serving as the foundations and basis for the webinar as well. The book itself has been quite a lot of work. I think, Olli, we've been basically building a book that would normally take a year to produce.
Yeah.
And we now did this in
3.5 weeks actually. So this has been like even less than a month. So I remember you got this idea, and I was like, okay, it's interesting, but do we have like enough time to produce it? But having a strict deadline and a clear focus and multiple persons putting their effort on it, so we are managed to do a 60-page guide over 260 references, science-backed.
It's a massive guide. We produced a couple of years ago the Biohackers special issue on building an invincible immunity, and this is a continuation to that book. And I have to say, in the last couple of years, the studies that have come out in terms of nutritional interventions for preventing bacterial and viral infections is definitely something worth looking into as a whole. And this review comes just in time. A month ago, when we started working on this, I had the feeling when I was looking at the molecular structure of the novel coronavirus that this could potentially become a pandemic in the way how it works and functions. And unfortunately, I was right, and the situation has got worse since. Now, if we look at how many air travels are done every year, according to Statista, there are 40 million flights per year on this planet, and those 40 million flights are carrying 4.7 billion travelers per year. And this will double in the next 15 years if things don't change. It's been continuously growing. So the world is more connected than ever. So what is worth noting is that 2003, when we got the last outbreak of SARS virus, we have doubled the amount of travel since. And we have also things like social media, which YouTube and Facebook and so on is spreading information faster than ever. And also science is extremely interconnected. So the world has definitely changed. Do you guys know how many percentage of the world population is being served by air travel? So how many percent of world's population are actually doing these 4.7 billion travels per year? 3%.
Because you revealed that to me.
Yeah, but Jaakko probably didn't know this fact, so I didn't reveal that yet. But it's a small number of people on this planet who do most of the travel. And if you're a traveler, you are a potential vector for transmitting these kind of diseases to other countries. So it's very important to know how you can prevent getting a potential infection, and if you get one, how do you make sure that the viral replication is not spreading as quickly as it could, and that you can detect things like this and potentially self-quarantine yourself so that you don't put other people in any kind of danger.
I think this is a good test for the world, the Earth, how these kind of quarantines and methods trying to prevent an epidemic, how they actually work, and if they're working. And so this is kind of a test, and we can totally learn from it, and then perhaps in the future do differently or see what actually works and what doesn't work. So it makes sense that put people in the quarantine, but also it could be a little bit of overshooting it.
Definitely from a government and organizational level, we are not fully prepared and ready for this. And also on an individual level, we are not fully prepared and ready for this. And the research that we've done goes deeper into what every single individual can do. So don't wait for any official party to do something. You can do things already yourself. But we are not
Sure.
recommending you to go and buy hazmat suits and getting glasses like this or air purifying technologies before you actually understand the fundamentals that we're going to cover here. Now, what I find quite interesting is this slide. So we have 1.4 billion incoming tourists by region, and basically right now half of those incoming travels come to Europe. And Europe has so far been a little bit outside of the epidemic. There is now something spreading in Italy, but if you just look over time, Europe is definitely not safe from these kind of things. And we are Europeans, so we care about these kind of things for sure. Now, if we look at what is the largest human migration on planet Earth, it is the Chinese New Year, so-called Chunyan, which has been estimated to have 3 billion trips this year. And out of those, 79 million were done by airplanes. So that's quite a significant number of travel that is done by Chinese. And it was basically like 15 million people who left Wuhan during the outbreak, and we don't know what's going to happen from that.
That's so much. That's so big popular population that it's hard to grasp even. Like China is so big and it's so kind of different from Europe and the whole other world that these kind of things may get like this kind of outbreak and very grand events.
Yeah, I think the biggest impact for us here will be definitely felt from not contracting the virus, but the economic impact from reduced air travel, reduced tourism. Also to Lapland, for example, here we got one case there recently, and also the logistics of the world is fully interconnected, and for example, it's already affecting the Biohacker Center as well. So we haven't been able to get some things like blue light blocking glasses and so on that are being actually manufactured in China as we speak.
It's actually funny. I was a few days back in Germany, where there was a big expo, and most of the countries in the world have like a pavilion for themselves. And of course the China pavilion was empty, but it was interesting to see how few people even went to that hall because of the China pavilion in there. So I think it's affecting in so many ways how we think and behave that we don't even yet realize that drastically, but yeah, that was interesting.
I think it's more psychological than it's physiological and physical. So and that's based on collective fear, and because we are connected, of course we feel the fear. So the psychological side is in my opinion it's massive, much bigger than the physiological side, and also the economic side. Nobody has any idea what's going to happen. An article I just read about like Walmart stacks, they only have like 3 days worth of stack, and then they kind of run out. So are we going into a situation where there's like no stuff in the shelves in Walmart, for example?
Yeah, this is totally Mad Max society or movie material soon, like totally dystopian apocalypse stuff is potentially right behind the corner. But no fear, right? No fear.
No fear.
The psychology stuff is key here. And one of the key things about this webinar is to spread information, how you can prepare yourself so that you don't have to be afraid of a virus like this. Now, we have the chat going on our YouTube channel at Biohacker Summit. So if you want to comment, if you're following this on Facebook or Twitter or any other channel, you can go to Biohacker Summit YouTube channel. Make sure you follow, and I also recommend you guys to comment or ask questions during this webinar. We'll be picking up. I'll have direct connection to our communications department, who is sending us messages. Nate M is asking, for example, what is the most effective antiviral herb or substance? Nate, we will be answering this very, very soon. We have actually not just one, but many solutions to this question. Now, Lakta Mayer is asking, which supplement do you have on the table? We're going to be revealing
every one of these.
Every single one of these supplements here, and these are the most effective supplements based on our research right now for protecting yourself from getting a potential viral infection, not just coronavirus, but the influenza virus or the common cold. Michael Lucci is asking, what was the electronic device to create the bubble? Now, this device is called, it's basically an air purifier that doesn't use a filter. So you have HEPA filters that filter things with a physical filter. Now, this thing is actually using ultraviolet light in combination with a reaction that happens on these nanomaterials that are on a mesh inside this device. And it basically degrades things like viruses and bacteria basically to their pure elements. So it completely destroys them. And this mechanism is called photocatalysis. And you can maybe Google photocatalysis air purifier. You can find several solutions for this.
We also go through different kind of light technologies, how you can actually improve your immunity with light. So light therapies are the future of medicine also.
Totally. So they use ultraviolet light already in hospitals to disinfect, but you can also use different wavelengths of light to actually slow down viral replication. We're going to go into this in this webinar. Now, I just want to remind you that right now, 389,000 of people, as an estimate, die to seasonal influenza on a yearly basis. Now, if you break down also World Health Organization statistics on the leading causes of death every year, you have 15.2 million who die in cardiovascular disease, you have 3 million who die in pulmonary disease, and another 3 million who die in COPD. What is this, Olli?
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Usually it's due to cigarette smoking, but that's like in 90% of the cases. So it's covered that your lungs are destroyed from the inside out, and the alveoli that they're going to be like popping off from work. So it means that the lungs are like expanding, but at the same time it's obstructing the small pathways of air.
Nasty, so basically
that is nasty.
You suffocate yourself.
Yeah, I saw these like multiple, quite severe cases in hospital times when I was in hospital. So nothing funny.
Yeah, 1.6 million people die in diabetes every year. If you are a diabetic, you're also at higher risk of getting complications from seasonal influenza and common cold. Now, for people our age, I'm basically a little bit less than 40 right now, and Olli just 40, and Jaakko is
early 30s.
At least
Jaakko is 17.
Old, according to Buddhists. Now, the highest risk for us to die is actually traumatically in a car accident, not to viral infection like this. But if you put these statistics together and you look deeper into every single one of these, you can reduce your risk greatly by looking at your lifestyle, behavior, diet, exercise, recovery, sleep. All of those are linked to potentially getting killed every year by one of these leading causes. And when we researched viral and bacterial infections, what did we find out, Olli?
Quite a bit of things. I think we have a good slide on that, but
pretty similar things, right?
Yeah, but if you think about like the normal influenza or just the colds, the influenza is a real killer, but we are not making panic about it. But I think in this like corona case, this is kind of like a foreign virus or kind of a new virus, and that's why it's named novel, because it is novel. So we are not familiar with it. But to your question is that random, like average people get like, I don't know, at 5 colds per year. You don't even have to go that far. For example, Jaakko is a living example. How many times you actually have gotten ill in the past 10 years? I think you have like 0.
Why do you think that is, Jaakko?
And allies.
Are you using
Well, I think that
some things like this?
all the time.
I think it boils down quite a bit to healthy biome on my skin, on my gut lining, and of course I attribute that quite a bit to my intimate relationship with medicinal mushrooms and other things that seem to work pretty well, even compared to my 200 plus travel days every year. So I definitely get.
So Jaakko here is basically saying that he protects himself from bacteria and viruses by being fully exposed to them all the time.
Pretty much.
So here we can come to the theory. There's like actually a kind of few names, an epidemic of absence, which means that we are not in the environment where we actually get exposed to different kind of microbes. And this is the old friend thesis or the hygiene hypothesis, which has been proven to be kind of correct. So in the past years, allergies, inflammatory conditions are on a dramatic rise. So not being exposed to pathogens and microbes it might be even as harmful as being exposed to harmful substances. So there is this balance that you expose yourself to different kind of pathogens, but by fortifying your own immune system, it takes care of these, and then you create this learned immune system response, which is very rapid once you have a contact with a pathogen.
Right. So if you look at internationally all the different pandemics and epidemics we have had throughout history, if you go just a couple of 100 years back, you can see that people actually died quite a lot in these kind of epidemics. If you look at modern times, not quite so. So we have definitely improved our medical system, as well as different drugs, antibiotics, as well as vaccines have contributed to this.
Information is also power. So if you think about the Spanish flu and times before telefax and phones, and even the internet is fairly new, so the information is key here. So people they have no idea what actually hit them.
Right. So there was all kinds of rumors in times of Black Death, for example, where that potential thing is actually originating from. Is it from the water, or is it in the air, or is it in the food, or
angry gods,
or was it rats, or what was it? But what is interesting here, genetically speaking, is that if researchers have estimated that people were, on average, 0.01% of world population was naturally immune to plague before Black Death. And after several swipes of plague, we are now around 15% immune to these kind of infections. So the world population actually has died off on a pretty regular basis every 100 years or so, from 10 to 14% whole world's total population. So we're actually on an extended time here. This has not happened in recent times, but from genetics perspective, actually this kind of thing enables on a species level us to become more resilient to potential pathogens. And now we have the technology to probably extend this even further. We'll see how that goes, but sometimes these kind of epidemics are actually a good thing from species survival and resilience point of view. It just filters out the stuff that doesn't work.
Also research point of view, because the world top research on like infectious disease and so on, immunology, they need to work together, and epidemiology, and I've seen like papers popping out like mushrooms in the rain, like super new papers. Of course, they're like preprints, but we get the information like very fast, and then we can act based on the information and the hypothesis, and also the not clinical but biochemical evidence that might arise from them.
Yeah. If you look at the transmission of diseases from animals to humans, that's called the zoonosis, and most of those diseases that we just listed on the previous page as epidemics have actually jumped from animals to humans. HIV is a good example. Another good example is actually the Spanish flu. It jumped from birds, they estimate, and by the way, it didn't come from Spain, it actually came from China. Cheers to that, guys.
China!
Cheers.
Corona.
Cheers to China.
Yeah.
China is brewing all kinds of cool pathogens.
You know, actually, in beer there is ferulic acid, which is a polyphenol that actually might be helpful in preventing some kind of viruses. So that's kind of like a interesting.
Always a reasoning.
Yeah.
There's always a reason to drink beer. Now, Jaakko, what else has ferulic acid?
I think dark chocolate or cacao
That's the best.
is pretty much the number one source. So one more good reason to get some chocolate into your diet. But that being said, I think that for many people, let's say with herpes virus, for example, many people realize that it often activates, like if you have a lip herpes, after you've overdone chocolate or overdone eating nuts. And I think that has something to do with the super high arginine content and that its relationship to lysine. So there's definitely also something to be said consuming too much dark chocolate.
Indeed.
Yeah. So
Indeed.
It's not necessarily just that eat shit ton of
same with the Corona beer.
Yeah. But a little bit might be a pretty good idea.
Aromatic dose.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should move on.
Yeah, let's go on. I think many people are extremely excited to know what our tips and tricks are for nutrition. But basically, the world has become a massive petri dish for infectious diseases. If you look at China, we have now around 80,000 confirmed cases. Now, these are official numbers, and in case of SARS, the actual numbers were 10 times bigger in retrospect. We don't know if this is now 10 or 20 times or 5 times bigger, but we will see later. But definitely the measures outline that probably this is a much bigger problem than what we see here. So Quentin Tarantino is Tentin Quarantino for most people very soon.
That was a good one. That's like
one of the best
style
memes
for me and Jaakko. So
somebody was just washing dishes and they're just like,
well, that guy. I have this. Yeah,
I have this. China is actually now communicating that they are being able to contain the virus a little bit. You know, it has no longer been spreading exponentially. But some people are skeptical about this fact, because if you look at the cases outside of China, those are growing exponentially. Within China, it is actually being dampened down. And they've changed the different ways how they look at this. We don't know the truth, but there's a good reason to be skeptical about these numbers. That's basically the point here.
Sure.
But definitely they've done a lot of measures to...
I think we get more accurate numbers outside China. So we don't know what the political agenda might be, and if they want to downplay some numbers or so. But that's hypothetical. I don't think we should put our energy in that.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, but Nobel Prize winner microbiologist Joshua Lederberg has said that the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on the planet is the virus. And he, if someone
What
knows
is the
this.
virus?
But fear is like a virus you can't transmit with words, and that is what's happening right now.
If you take a look at the news, so it's all around. So people get saturated with quite easily, and it's a psychological test that if you go with the fear, or if you just take a look, like a step back and look it more objectively, and that's what we provide also here.
Are you, Jaakko, are you already hysteric about this epidemic?
Chronic.
I think that there's something to be said from like psychoneuroimmunological side of things, that if you actually start to be more fearful, it has a biochemical tendency to make things work.
Right.
It sure does.
Yeah.
So you're basically
Yeah.
manifesting the disease.
In a sense, yeah. Or at least like,
Lower your immune system
Yeah.
response.
Well, we know what chronic fear does. It's a chronic stressor. It lowers the response of the immune system. So that's like basic knowledge, basic science being shown again and again. So it is as important to take care of your psychological well-being as it is physical well-being.
so just look at the things as they are.
Yeah.
Right. So let's take a look at the things as they are and what you can actually do about this. We have basically outlined in the book a 5-step plan on how you can basically prepare yourself and be more aware of what is reality and what is not, and what you can do about things. Now there's 5 steps that you can do. The first one is precaution. So increasing your understanding of various pathogens, not just the coronavirus, but in general, like to be able to understand how they spread, how they work, how they can be slowed down, and how you can reduce your exposure to these things. Preparation, how you prepare your internal environment. That could be your workplace, it could be your home, it could be what you travel with, so that you reduce your potential contact in times of disease. Now, Jaakko might be someone who is exposing himself voluntarily to different bacteria all the time. And I'm also doing the same thing. But when there is an epidemic, it's a good reason to be a little bit more cautious. And once things settle down, not to be that afraid of things like seasonal cold. Prevention. How you can prepare your external and internal environment so that if you get in contact with a virus like this, it is able to produce less harm. Now, internal environment can also be basically your digestive system, it could be your biochemistry, many things. And then if you do contract an infection, how you can slow down its replication and proliferation in your body, and how you can support your immune system in its natural functioning, and also how you can avoid infecting others. And once you recover, how you respond, restore the balance of your system so that you don't get a secondary disease. Leading reason why people die of influenza, for example, is not influenza itself, but a secondary disease that comes after it, or some kind of complication. So reflecting on all of this, we're going to dive deep into all these practical tips next. Let's start from fortifying your immune system. Now, we wrote the book, Biohacker's special report on immunity. And this is something that I recommend everyone to check out after they looked at the Biohacker's flu guide, so they get better understanding of the overall functioning of the immune system.
Yeah, I have this stream, YouTube stream open, so there's one very good comment I want to put in the front from Mikko. So he says that the problem lies in overloading of health system if corona strikes in bigger scale into each city, society, which is absolutely correct. So how are we prepared for that? And in that, the reducing the fear and unnecessary doctors' contacts and so on. So we are not like
definitely. Yeah. So if you're afraid you contracted something, be very, very cautious about how you're going to overload the system, or if you're going to go crazily shopping and emptying shelves when here there is one case in your country. So it's good to be prepared, but hysteria and panic is not going to support overall survival of the species.
Yes.
Now let's jump into the immune system. So you can basically split up the immune system into 2 parts. Maybe Olli, you can give a very quick
to make things simple, we have basically innate immunity, and then it's the acquired immunity.
Innate is what you are born with, right?
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that have an effect on that, and I think we shouldn't go too deep in this one.
Not at all.
It's in our Invincible Immunity Guide. But the other one is the acquired system, which when you contract different kind of pathogens, you create immune responses from the T cells and the B cells, and they have memory. And then when you contact them again, it's the response is very fast, and you can actually train your immune system by exposing yourself, as Jaakko has done, by traveling and different kind of landscapes and so on. But if you go like very let's put the slide back on. Very briefly, we have these like anatomical barriers, epithelium, mucosa. The digestive system is super important. We have secretory IgA over there.
So you don't want to have like leaky gut, for example.
No, and you want to have good stomach acid levels, because if it's too like base. If it's not acidic enough, it's gonna be also getting pathogens inside. So that's also destroying pathogens. Very important.
So you wouldn't recommend chronic long-term use of proton pump inhibitors? If you
No,
want good
it's
immunity?
known side effect that it will totally like impair the digestive system and also immunity. But you can read more from the Invincible Immunity Guide. We should go forward.
Absolutely. So some basic immunity balancing factors. Obviously, good immunity is linked to also the balance of the nervous system. So you balance sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activation, so rest and digest, as well as fight or flight. Now, when you spend time in fight or flight, when you run from one meeting to another, you're fully hardcore stressed and so on. It can keep the pathogens away for a brief moment, but chronic exposure to these things will impair your immune system function long term. And things like chronic sleep deprivation, I mean, we can go deeper into the biochemistry, how these things happen, but definitely the things that we have considered as good lifestyle choices are linked to also stronger immunity naturally.
Often when you have a chronic stress and then you get the relief and you have a chance to rest, people get sick, because then the heightened cortisol, adrenal, and so on are actually downplayed, and then maybe the like kind of a what's the word, like remnant or like a hiding pathogen inside your system may be activated, and that's when people many stressed people, they report that when they go into vacation they get sick. So
there's already a pathogen in their system, and it manifests. So the immune system manifests its response once you get to relax.
Chronic infections are on the rise also dramatically. So people are chronically infected, but it's not like creating any like severe symptoms at the moment. But it might slow you down quite a bit and also impair a lot of different kind of things happening inside your body.
Yeah. So Jaakko, when have you been like sick in the last 10 years or so, like so that you know what we're talking about here?
I think this is now reoccurring theme, but no. Yeah.
So Jaakko has not been, but you maybe felt something occasionally.
Not really.
Okay,
No.
You never felt anything. I actually did feel something a couple of weeks ago, and I did everything that I just learned in the Biohacker's Flu Guide, and it just went away in a couple of days. It was amazing, like how fast recovery I felt.
Of course, I feel occasionally something kind of tries to get into my system, but that's when you start to dose the mushrooms and all other stuff, and then it goes away. But yeah, and it's interesting. I think that I can almost feel when the immune system ramps it up and starts to fight the system, but it's not manifested by, fever or typical reactions, but more of like, I just feel that my nervous system and my hormonal system is activated more, but yeah, that happens every now and then.
And even if you had a fever, it's actually a good thing, because many people say that I never have fever, and then they have flus like last for 2 months. So the fever could actually be destroying very rapidly. So that's how children's immune responses work when they are like healthy. For example, my daughter, 4 years old, and she's isn't sick usually at all, doesn't get the regular flus, but she had like a few of these strong fever spikes up to almost 40, and it's few hours and then it's gone.
Right. Hormetic stressors have shown to strengthen the immune system. What it does, things like ice baths and going to a sauna or exercise or sunlight or certain phytochemicals, it lowers reactive oxygen species. And reactive oxygen species have been linked to viral and bacterial infections. So once you get an infection, usually reactive oxygen species go up. And as reactive oxygen species go up, you get oxidative damage, and in that process also the virus or bacteria proliferates. So it basically accelerates in spreading inside your body. So if you can keep this type of oxidative stress at minimum, so basically reducing reactive oxygen species, reducing oxidative damage, especially when you start seeing some symptoms, you should do this as a precaution always. But if you see something happening, activating hormesis might be one of the means through which you can reduce viral replication. Now, Jaakko is someone who's been doing cold plunges and sauna sessions like crazy. Like, how much have you done that, like on average?
This year, I did a lot because I trained for the Finnish championships of ice swimming.
You were really successful.
Yeah,
in that
I was for it. It went pretty well, but yeah, that's been pretty much a staple for, I would say, for the past 4 months. I've done pretty much like at least 5 days a week, like long sessions, hour, 2 hours. And if you think about like how sauna affects, it also kind of fries your body. If you raise your core temperature for extended periods of time, there's definitely something to be said about just that alone. Right. And that also brought to my mind that in China they have a nice old idea about these 3 treasures, that you build something up before something happens. So you basically build your treasures and bury it. And then when shit hits the fan and you need it, then you can dig it up. So I think that that's a good idea or kind of metaphor for these hormetic stressors, that you build your resilience over time. And that's what I think I've done for the past decade. Absolutely. I've done so much for a long period of time that it gets kind of harder over time for your body to get, blasted with such a pathogen that it can kind of go through your armor. So right. I think that's a good idea.
So you're basically training your immune system and nervous system response just like a muscle. So if it contracts something, the pathogens have no chance.
Yeah, it's like a nerve force. Right. You have a more force there.
I have one question to Olli. So common cold. So people think that when it gets cold, especially common here in Finland, that you are more likely to get sick. So is temperature, like lower temperatures or feeling that you're freezing, is that linked to higher risk of getting a cold? What does the research say?
So I took a look at this actually 2 days ago. So there's some older research from the 90s that say that it is a factor, the cold, and also the humidity of the air, but it depends on the cold. If it's like freezing, multiple degrees below 0 Celsius, then the pathogens usually don't even live there. But around 0, then you might get exposed to these easier. But to your point,
so the pathogens basically they like cold temperatures and they survive more easily. Is that the point?
No, they don't like very cold, but it is very typical when it gets fall and then temperatures suddenly drop. Then people are not adapted to that drop, and their immune system is more susceptible to the infections.
I've read actually that the viruses can replicate more effectively in colder temperatures. So that might be a factor.
Yeah,
bacteria, on the other hand, they survive really nicely on
Yeah.
a little bit warmer temperatures.
But there are two different aspects here. So it's the cold weather, and on the other hand, the cold exposure. So you can train yourself in the cold to become more resilient to these kind of things. But if you suddenly contact, or it suddenly gets cold and you're not used to it, then it might be a problem. So
Exactly.
there are like two different kind of
So
aspects here.
exposing yourself to cold temperatures throughout the year with cold showers, ice plunges is basically a way to prepare yourself when temperatures drop.
Yes.
Awesome. So
Yes.
yeah, that's basically what we are talking about here in terms of hormetic stressors, and there is basically a dose response curve. So a lot of exposure all the time is not necessarily good, but a little bit of frequent exposure to stressors is good. So they studied things like toxins in plants. If you take like curcumin or ginger, and you take what happens is, in nature, it's a protective mechanism, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also a way that we've communicated with plants for such a long period of time that for a symbiotic relationship, it's important for us to also kind of respect the plant. If you eat too much of it, it will kill the plant, and it's not good survival strategy for the plant. So plants that kind of should be eaten in massive amounts are often kind of grasses or something that cows
spread
eat
the
or
seeds.
whatever. But when it comes to these medicinal plants, it's kind of the way for the plant to tell us and just eat a little bit and spread the seeds and all that. So I think there's something that if we actually tune into the flavors and you bite into the turmeric root, it kind of tells pretty quickly like, well, this is not that you eat this high amounts every day, but you eat it just a little bit and then
Right. Yeah.
change to something else.
According to studies, these phytochemicals, they stimulate the immune system in small amounts. They can be toxic to microorganisms in those quantities that they usually get exposed, but in humans it's kind of a hormetic dose. So
Yes.
a huge amount might be problematic. Like if you take certain volatile oils from thyme or rosemary, those are actually toxic to humans in large quantities, but in small amounts are actually stimulating our immune systems.
Well, if you think about spices, you don't use like 100 grams of thyme for a meal, but it's just a little bit, a pinch of that.
And
Yeah.
many of these terpenes, they're actually even that powerful that when you go to the forest, many of the benefits of forest bathing come through just inhaling a very tiny amounts of these terpenes from trees. So
So
just
you're-
think about how little there needs to be of those to get the cellular response for that.
Few particles per
Yeah.
million. So
So basically you're microdosing the forest
Yes,
as you walk
yeah,
there.
Shinrin Yoku with
Shinrin
all your
Yoku.
senses.
Yeah, I've been microdosing vitamin D recently because it's so dark. I don't get much. I would love to get a massive dose of it. Vitamin D we get mostly from sun. Some of that also from food sources. And on your cells, you have the vitamin D receptor in your immune system cells, in the intestine and bones. And basically, what is going on here is that your T cells, that you can also call them killer T cells, they attack potential pathogens. But those guys are not doing anything if you don't have circulating vitamin D that attaches to vitamin D receptors and activates them. So that's why it is very important to have circulating vitamin D, and in large enough concentrations so that your killer T cells are able to respond to pathogens. So even if your immune system detects them, it doesn't mean that they're going to attack.
Yeah, indeed. And here's actually, if you think about this more closely, so what we usually measure is the calcidiol, and that's not actually active in the cells, but it's a calcitriol that's attached to the VDR, the vitamin D receptor, and you can actually measure the difference between the calcidiol and calcitriol. And if the calcitriol is super high, it means that the receptors are not taking the vitamin D there, and that might be an indication of a chronic infection actually, and an impaired immune system. So that's something that's been researched quite a bit in the last years, and I also did that in my doctor's office, and I measured actually both of those. So.
Right. So if you have low-level inflammation or a chronic disease, it can impair your immune system by basically occupying your vitamin D on somewhere else than where it's needed.
Could be also that, but the main thing here is that the vitamin D receptors are not working. But we should not go too deep on this, just to
certainly
make notice that this is highly important, and it's a hormone-like substance, not so much a vitamin.
Yeah, I have here liquid vitamin D3 from Life Extension, 2000 IU per drop. And I like to use vitamin D basically by taking a slightly larger dose occasionally instead of dosing it every day. So I might take like 10,000 or 20,000 IU once a week or twice a week. And especially this time of the year, if I get sun exposure, I don't take vitamin D on those days. So.
And anyhow, you should measure your vitamin D3 levels just to make sure that you're not taking too much. But the more common problem is that you don't have enough of it. So it's chronically low levels of vitamin D3 is kind of like a plague is maybe a strong word, but it's definitely epidemic, not having enough vitamin D3. So that's the key component in the whole immune system, and I think everyone should start from there.
Right. By the way, if you want to get some of our product recommendations, you can go to shop.biohackercenter.com. So shop.biohackercenter.com, and that's where you get, most of the material that we researched for this webinar specifically.
And also most effective products and most trustworthy and science-based and laboratory tested. So they're like the supplement industry is Wild West. So if you use supplements, just make sure that you get the best of the best.
Right, so we can actually check here. So at shop.biohackercenter.com, you get all the product recommendations that we have on this show. And we ship internationally, globally. So those are some of the best products we found. We're going to go through some of these now.
Sure. Yeah, so next.
So vitamin D, that's it. Now,
let's have like a hypothetical situation. If you get sick, what would you want to do? So we brought in here that you might want to make a dose with vitamin D3. Like immediately. And then, of course, it depends what your levels are, but megadosing it for a short period of time is not going to be toxic. So it's a fat-soluble vitamin. The toxic levels only come if you're like putting it in yourself too much for a long period of time. So I would have a good punch of vitamin D3 there. Yeah. And from there, especially with upper respiratory tract infection and kind of symptoms. Next slide. So
let's just wait a second. What is important here is that you measure your levels, that you know where you are. According to a 2014 study from University of Cambridge, the mortality rate was lowest when calcidiol levels were at least 19 nmol/liter. And actually, according to World Health Organization or World Hysteria Organization, taking vitamin D is one of the things that is extremely well supported by multiple meta-analysis for both prevention and also shortening the duration of the infection. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, so about the values, so people in the US, they use like, I think it's nanograms per deciliter or something like that. So it is advised to change and compare the numbers there. But from there, this is also Cochrane based analysis, so it's taken into account every possible study out there. So zinc acetate or zinc picolinate used as a lozenge. So that's those are like huge tablets that you slowly are melting under your tongue, and it takes about 30 minutes for each of these tablets to get melted. And you want to use this in the beginning 5 times per day to get 75 milligrams, and from there, depending on your symptoms, reducing it a little bit. So if you go back to the slide.
Back to the slides, thank you.
Yeah, picolinate, it's not a good option, but I think the acetate, that's the best research version of that. Vitamin C, it's I think it has a not so good rap. I think it's been diminished now. There's no point to use vitamin C. There is, especially if you contract the virus. Immediately again here begin microdosing it.
So people take vitamin C as a precaution, and they think that it's reducing their risk for contracting the disease.
It is in athletes, but it hasn't been shown to reduce the risk in normal people. But if you have chronically low vitamin D reservoirs, for example in the adrenals and other tissues, it is wise to use liposomal vitamin C just to get the levels into a good place. So for that
we have this one. Actually.
Yeah, that's liposomal vitamin C. This is absolutely the best of the best there is available. It's Quicksilver Scientific. There's also R-lipoic acid. So this is a kind of a hybrid combination to also reduce the oxidative stress in the body. So this is something. If you're chronically sick and you know that you need more vitamin C and you want to upload your tissue vitamin C levels up, then this is the right choice.
Right. So this particular one, you can just throw a few pumps into your mouth and you're good to go. But basically, vitamin C is something that helps you when you get the infection. And many of these things are linked to how the body fights infection, reduces reactive oxygen species, etc.
Yeah, and if you go back to vitamin C for a little while, it sounds quite a bit to take 1 gram every hour, but that's based on placebo-controlled randomized study, and it showed that it has a dramatic effect on like putting a punch to the virus. And
show me again.
And it is working. It's just 6 hours. You do that, and then you take it like 3 times per day until you don't need it.
So most of these things you should do within 24 hours of contracting the disease to slow it down. There's other tools that we're going to go into, like medicinal mushrooms, beta-glucans, zinc, selenium, many other things. But these are kind of the top 3 things to do immediately. Vitamin C has also shown to reduce the duration of mechanical ventilation in critically ill patients. So if you get coronavirus and you get hospitalized and you're in a critically ill situation, get some vitamin C, man.
If you're in a ventilation machine, it's pretty hard to speak, but IV vitamin C, that was even in the news in Finland. It's interesting to see that these kind of old vitamins are popping up also in the news. So it is effective. I think we are going to be seeing more use for these kind of treating methods.
Yeah, vitamin C in this case was actually released in a meta-analysis 2020, very recent article, and Harri Hemilä is from Finland.
Yeah, Hemilä has been researching a lot of vitamins in like I think past almost 20 years, at least based on the research I've seen from him. So kudos.
Good stuff coming from him. Now, another really interesting recent article that came out was basically different nutraceuticals that have potential for boosting the type 1 interferon response, so basically your immune system response to RNA viruses. So the coronavirus is an RNA virus, and many zoonotic viruses that jump from animals to humans are not DNA viruses, but RNA viruses. And so here's a list of things from this article specifically for daily dosing to aid your immune system response to RNA viruses like influenza and coronavirus. So we mentioned ferulic acid, so Corona beer. We also mentioned chocolate, which is a much better choice.
Yeah. But this was interesting because it was listed in that specific article. But raw chocolate, raw cacao, absolutely the best source.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, I think did you have the vitamin C somewhere here?
Yeah.
Yeah, this vitamin C has also lipoic acid on it. So it's vitamin C with R-lipoic acid.
Yeah.
So R-lipoic acid is also listed here. And another thing is spirulina. What can we learn about spirulina?
Jaakko, Mr.
Jaakko,
Spirulina.
Give us some spirulina, man. Why spirulina?
I think it's still, after all of the years, one of my go-to green powders, even if it tastes pretty shitty. But when it's in tablet form, without any fillers, it's pretty easy to actually get quite a high amounts of it. So I think that's one of my go-to things while traveling. And it has a stupid amount of all the carotenoids and all the different types of phytochemicals in it. So it's a good kind of a phyto multivitamin also. So a lot of different color pigments, and there's actually quite a bit of just essential nutrients also.
I also noticed recently an article about Ebola, how Ebola can be slowed down with a dose of spirulina. Actually, that was a recent study as well.
And it's a cyanobacteria, so it's a very ancient old organism. So in that sense, it probably also has a few tricks in its sleeve.
You're right on the money.
Yeah.
Actually, it was cyanobacteria specifically, which is in spirulina, that basically we have this ancient bacteria helping us in our immune system response. Amazing stuff. Now we have here also liposomal glutathione. N-acetylcysteine is actually a building block for, I don't have the Rohtos shield, but if you check the shop.biohackercenter.com, you can find the Rohtos shield from there. Here is life extension version, N-acetylcysteine. The Rohtos formulation is a more comprehensive one with N-acetylcysteine plus a bunch of other things that are supportive in the metabolism of this specific nutrient in its detoxification
also
pathways.
Works very well if you drink alcohol and you want to get rid of it fast.
Get rid of hangovers, and also if you smoke tobacco, it has shown to be useful. Now, N-acetylcysteine itself is a building block for glutathione, so it's a natural amino acid.
As it's vitamin C.
As is vitamin C. So if you dose N-acetylcysteine and vitamin C, you're basically helping your body to build glutathione. But you can get glutathione directly with liposomal preparation as well. So here we go.
Let's do double dose to the hips.
Double dose to the hip.
It's a dose.
Double dose. Oh yeah. Now, glucosamine is actually something that in nature exists, for example, in chitin that is in medicinal mushrooms like polypore mushrooms, as well as things like shiitake, chaga, reishi.
Insect cells are pretty much, or the shielding on
also
different
seafood.
Insects that's made of chitin. So I don't think that's very bioavailable source, but if you think about it, the structure is highly.
I think they use shellfish shells actually to extract glucosamine, which they use in supplement form. Selenium, we're going to go into it. Zinc as well, we'll go into it. Yeast, beta-glucans, so nutritional yeast is a good thing that many vegan diets like to use. And
but I have to say that the glucan structures in yeast are pretty lousy compared to the mushrooms, so it's a different type of glucan. So the bioavailability or just an effect is much higher in these 3 to 6 glucans that are available in mushrooms.
Here we have chaga, in Finnish pakuri. This is the strongest pakuri or chaga solution I've tasted ever. This is from Finnish chaga, and Jaakko is behind formulating this specific product here.
Have you actually collected this
No.
chagas?
But I think there's something to be said that chaga that is grown in very harsh environment in northern Finland has kind of stronger immune system itself. And again, I think in was 2013, I remember there was one study from Novosibirsk, from northern parts of Russia or Siberia, where they collected some, I think it was 29 different samples of mushrooms around the area, and chaga had the highest antiviral activity of all of the mushrooms. And all of the mushrooms are pretty damn good in antiviral activity. Yeah. So it's especially the very dark part of chaga that has this chromogenic complex that's super antiviral. And I love these tinctures.
You can share here your comments if you have used chaga, and it's becoming more and more popular. And I would say Jaakko is Mr. Chaga because you have written a book about chaga, and it's perhaps coming into English language.
You've been trying to pressurize me for the past, I don't know how many years, but
I think there's a demand for chaga book.
And I have
English.
to say, when it comes to mushrooms, Paul Stamets has pretty interesting research on the idea of combining different strains of mushrooms, and he had these kind of in vitro studies where he combined 3 different mushroom strains, which is not a stupid amount, and the shield activity index, which is kind of towards different viruses, compared to ribavirin, which was pretty standard antiviral drug, the shield activity index was literally like 1000x compared to this antiviral drug when you combined several different mushroom strains.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't imply that to clinical use, but it says something that with combining these different glucan structures from medicinal mushrooms, there seems to be a synergistic effect. And even with combining vitamin C, it makes these glucans absorb even better. So my understanding has always been that even or with combining different mushrooms and combining that with vitamin C, you get kind of like a really nice immune support.
That is actually new knowledge to me. I've noticed from my own experiments and also learned from you from years back on that combining different kind of medicinal fungi and mushrooms is actually the way to do it, and that's what I've been doing the past few years. Also, I didn't know that if you add vitamin C there, it's even more potent, but it makes totally sense if you think about it.
I've used many of these different medicinal mushrooms as a blend, and every day maybe 10 different mushrooms, also taking the alcohol extracts. Some things to mention here, for example, shiitakes that you can buy usually from stores. Now, reishi is another one that I want to bring up. So here we have probably the most badass reishi in the world. This reishi is not from China. This reishi is from Finland.
And it's wild.
And this is wild reishi, so it's like it's not lab grown, and wild things need to protect themselves, so they produce more of those medicinal compounds. And this product, I have to say, might never come back again in stock because it's such a rare treat. So the reishi thing here, you can also see from the color here, it's completely dark, so it has a lot of the mushroom solids. It tastes like mushrooms, and definitely in terms of beta-glucans, it's very effective. So when you take these things, the beta-glucans in your intestine stimulate your body to activate your macrophages. So macrophages are the guys who go and eat potential pathogens.
They're like Pac-Mans.
They're like Pac-Mans, basically, going and taking them. And another source of beta-glucans, in addition to medicinal mushrooms, in terms of different grains, is actually what is kaura in English? Oats. So oats have high number of beta-glucans. So if you eat oats, you get beta-glucans as well.
There's a good comment in the chat. We have to apologize. There's a spammer who was removed, and now the spammer is back there again. So Eetu, if you can remove this spammer.
Yeah.
Love, sex, rap, blah, blah, blah. But from Mr. Nebula, he said he took 20 times 1,500 milligrams of 4-sigmatic chaga inside 24 hours when trying to catch a cold once. So the whole spectrum of symptoms got sped up, and I went through the entire cycle in 24 hours. So it kind of meant fast forward. So that's interesting to hear.
That's pretty amazing. Now, talking about the gut specifically, you want to basically fix your gut lining. So if there is any damage that has happened on your gut lining,
Good.
What you definitely want to take is glutamine. And I don't know, I think we have maybe somewhere here.
Here we have a capsules over there.
Yeah, we have here. We have life extension glutamine.
And that's also in the shop. So this is the preferred version, super high quality. And if you don't want to mix any powders, just take a few of these. And if you want a stronger effect, especially in the gut, you might want to take more, even 5 grams.
Yeah,
I've noticed that with food poisoning, if I take like 5-6 grams single dose after, I feel much better after 2 days. So it definitely helps fixing the gut lining. L-glutamine is great. Another good source for fixing the gut is definitely things like whey protein, actually.
Colostrum.
Colostrum even better because, colostrum has basically all the bioactive peptides that the baby needs, because the baby's gut is actually leaky, so it closes down within, like, let's say 5 days. So the first milk of the mother contains a lot of bioactive peptides and proline-rich polypeptides, of which lactoferrin is one. And this has been one of my go-tos for my previous patients, especially if they have immunity problems, but also like gastrointestinal problems.
So here we have a beautiful illustration just a moment ago about lactoferrin, and here's life extension lactoferrin capsules. It's the apolactoferrin form, and extremely good thing to take if you want to boost your natural immune system responses.
I would use it as like a not like all the time, but especially if you want to fortify your immune system and also fix the gut, so on. So a few of those every year, or if you have more problems, then continuous use is also advised.
So in times of epidemics, you may want to dose on this for a month and see what happens.
Well, at least what I've been doing, I've been really like dosing different kind of medicinal fungi and lactoferrin and glutamine, just to make myself even more resilient to all the possible dangers outside there, so I don't have to be afraid and I can go to, I'm not going to go to China, but for example to Amsterdam.
Now, talking about the gut microbiome, that's another really important thing. So if you make a comparison between the diversity of different gut bacteria in hunter-gatherers compared to industrialized people, we have reduced diversity of the microbiome. And reduced diversity of the microbiome has been linked to higher susceptibility of getting an infection, a viral infection or bacterial infection. So actually these guys work in collaboration with your immune system to protect itself and to feed your microbiome. A diverse diet feeds a diverse microbiome.
So I can reflect on the, like a doctor-patient kind of a relationship point. So I used to do like hundreds and hundreds of these gastrointestinal GI effects tests that you can actually see what's the microbial diversity in the gut, and I would say about 90% had poor diversity, and they had like numerous problems on their health. So I think it's one of the key factors regarding like total health in the system, also in the immune system.
And I think it's just that the fact that those people, hunter-gatherers or farmers, they're outside, and if you want to learn about your immediate environment, you need somebody who's good at navigating that system. So of course, the bacteria and the viral vectors that are happening in your environment, if you expose yourself to the bacteria that are basically every day, all day fighting towards those specific strains, you get a very specific intelligence inside of you when you get exposed to those, soil organisms while, churning the soil and picking mushrooms and all that. So it's one of the most kind of easy to understand concepts also, that you're picking the intelligence of your environment when you're actually exposing yourself to it. So they are not just some random small organisms, but there are the organisms that are every day building resilience towards those vectors in your environment. And for me, this has been always very fascinating, because when we see, let's say, a rise in Lyme's disease or something here in the southern parts of Finland, you pretty much always see kind of the antidote for it popping up also in nature. For me, it was very funny. Years back, I was gonna give an interview or a lecture in Turku, and the interviewer asked me about Lyme's disease specifically, because there were so many incidences that summer. And I was just reading another article that said that there's this foreign plant that's going everywhere in the Turku area called Japanese knotweed, which in herbalism is the herb towards Lyme's disease.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny for me that when something gets out of whack in a nature, there's almost like a balancing act in there. So we can learn quite a bit by just injecting more of that intelligence in a form of bacteria and other microorganisms.
Intelligence in terms of microbes. I mean, we are run by alien life forms, basically.
Yeah.
Our bodies are, our cells are outnumbered by the different microorganisms living in our bodies, and you can call the human being as a holobiont. So we are basically the top of the food chain as a superorganism that is synthesizing all the different life forms that came before it and is working in unison with all of them. So the mitochondria in your cell is actually an ancient eukaryote, an ancient bacteria that has migrated in the center of your cell that produce a lot of the energy, ATP. That basically the reason why you're alive right now is because of that bacteria living inside your cells in a way. So probiotics are the food for your bacteria, and research has shown, especially in older adults, that it's a really good idea to get a really nice a blend of probiotics to prevent infections and slow them down if you get an infection. Now there's specific strains like Lactobacillus plantarum, Bifidobacterium lactis, and Lactobacillus plantarum seems to be the one that has most of the evidence.
Yeah, and that's why we chose also into our repertoire the Life Extension's Floor Acid Winter Immune. So there are I think there were almost 4 different kind of Lactobacillus plantarum strains that have been clinically validated, and hence the name Winter Immune. So it's these probiotics are also getting more advanced, and there's more research on that. So if you feel that you need extra help and boost, so in times of like epidemics and especially in the cold season, uploading these kind of things with yourself, or rather downloading stuff to your system is a helpful thing. But I think you mentioned kind of wrongly here, it's prebiotics that are the food for the bacteria.
Sorry
Just
about mixing up prebiotics and probiotics. Thank you for correcting on that
and
one.
prebiotics are, for example, in different kind of berries and mushrooms and fungi, so they all come together.
Correct.
In a sense, yeah.
I wonder if Mr. Siim Land is there remotely.
Perhaps you should call him.
So is his microphone on? I don't know if he's there.
Siim, are you there?
Yes.
We put our headphones on.
Is Siim there? No.
Seems to be problems.
He's disappeared. So if he arrives, Siim, just turn on your camera and we'll be ready to listen to your wise words.
I can send Siim message.
Yeah, send Siim a message so that he can jump in and maybe signal to you when he's there. So, yeah, cool. Let's go. Ah, now he's back. He's back.
He heard me.
I love your outfit, man.
Boom.
Onko se mute pois päältä? Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
What up, man?
How you doing? So Siim is living on an Estonian island. So Estonia is a pretty remote, small country with 1.1 million or something like this inhabitants. And Siim is on an island of Estonia. So he's basically taken the measures to escape the coronavirus by moving in the middle of nowhere on an island. And he's right now building a fortress there so that no one gets there. And he's fully able to survive on his own by just hunting and killing animals and eating them with his bare hands. Is that correct? So you wrote the metabolic autophagy book, and in this book you go to different dietary interventions that help you to build muscle and burn fat, as well as increase your lifespan. And autophagy is something that was researched and studied and very recently, quite extensively, including the work of a Japanese researcher who got a Nobel Prize of autophagy recently.
We have information that Siim is not
Heard?
We heard Siim, but is it that?
Let's see.
It's not.
It's live. I
it's
can
no
always.
sound. Okay, there's feedback.
I can check. So there's feedback from Siim.
So Siim, hold on there.
Let's see if we can do something to this.
We can hear you, but apparently people on a stream can't.
Okay.
So you can comment on the chat if you have read Siim's book. It's a quite massive book. I have it. I haven't read it like the whole book, but Siim has been creating like tons of content on YouTube for at least, I think it's about 3 years. So I think he has the absolute best YouTube channel on especially autophagy and intermittent fasting and so on. So in the flu guide we go also through what actually intermittent fasting and the benefits of autophagy are for the immune system. I know Jaakko has been doing it a lot, so you can that could be also a key factor why you're never sick.
Yeah, and I think that's the old saying that the nature's healing command is basically don't eat, be quiet, and hide. So I think it's even funny that how many of these modalities have become kind of trendy, whether it was through sensory deprivation tanks or silent retreats or getting into the darkness and fasting, but just don't do anything. Oftentimes that's the best thing that you can do. Don't do anything.
Don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's, I have a picture in my mind. It's if we have it on the slides, but there's a picture of a cell who is like fed, and then there's like starved, and you would like think that the fed cell is better, but it's actually the starved cell that's been cleaning all the waste products from there and recycling unnecessary parts. So it's a very helpful, and just doing like a water fast for about 5 to 7 days has been known to, it's actually kind of rebooting the whole immune system. So if you have like dramatic problems in your immunity and perhaps an autoimmune condition, you might want to try a real fast, of course guided with medical professionals.
Let's try if we can hear Siim.
Yes. But fasting is the ancient medicine. And I think...
Olli, can you have a little break?
Sure.
Just, so Siim, can you say something?
Let's try. I can hear you.
I think it works just fine.
If somebody can comment on the chat if
There's
you
some
can
delay.
hear.
There's a little
see.
delay probably, but I can see that Siim is actually going to the live stream here. He should be live.
Boom. Let's continue.
So Siim, give us a little primer on autophagy. Let's see if we can get this work. It's true.
We still have no sound.
Yeah, I think
Mr. Arina decides, shall we continue or fix?
Yeah, so let's unfortunately, because we don't have our technician here, because he is under influence right now, we can't get this working live. So we have to skip Siim's part. Unfortunately, sir, we can hear you, but I have no idea how to route that to the live stream. But yeah, Siim was helping us to make the work related to the Biohacker's flu guide, and he has a lot of information over there on autophagy. So we recommend you to check that up once we are sending that after the webinar. But let's jump into...
There's somebody suggesting that we put a headphone on the mic so that in that way it could work. So
Yeah,
people are actually having a little bit of echo there.
Ja. Otatko se Siimin pois ja laitat tuohon, me nähdään meidän slaidit taas.
Yeah. But anyhow, we recommend that you check Siim's book, The Metabolic Autophagy, and Siim has been producing content also for the flu guide, so he's a contributor in here. Anyhow, please check Siim's stuff on YouTube and on his blog. Superb guy, real prodigy on fasting and autophagy.
Okay, back to the show. Do we have here some slide on the autophagy parts?
Yep, it's at the end.
It's right. It's like very end.
Yeah, there is, because
Yeah.
there's a picture of the cell, which I actually discussed a few minutes ago. So
Here.
it's there. And there is also Yoshidori Ushumi.
Okay, so why you would consider fasting?
Well, just to torture myself. No, we actually went through this with Jaakko. So, but as a reminder, it's kind of a cleaning process of the body, and it's a natural process. And if you think about like animals and children, when they're sick, they usually don't want to eat. So that's also a natural way of clearing out pathogens, and just to help yourself clean the system and like recycle the cells and repair damaged cells. So here's the picture I referred to. So there's Bonteus, which means that it's plenty of stuff and energy there, and it's another one starved, and there are these autophagosomes that are actually kind of self-eating machinery, and which help them to clear out all the waste. So it's kind of like a phagocytosis that's happening with the macrophages, but this is a self-eating system. So it's kind of a Pac-Man eating itself.
Right. So we recommend, if you're traveling, to skip airplane food, because that is definitely not helping you to adjust to time zones, which has also been one of the effects of fasting. So if you eat at the destination in the morning, you will reset the supranucleus membrane that is linked to your biological clocks, basically.
Supranucleus chiasmatic,
Yeah,
the SCN.
Yes, that's correct. And Another thing that we recommend you to do is different kind of fasting mimetics. So how you basically simulate the effects of fasting. There are dietary interventions for that, like putting your body into ketosis is one of those. So you can keep on eating, but as long as you are basically reducing your carbohydrate intake and you're increasing your ketone production, you're also upregulating your immune system.
Yeah, this is what Siim has also been talking about a lot, about ketosis. So I can imitate Siim here if there is a lot of stuff that comes out, but Siim is a master on that. So ketosis really helps, and the latest research on actually that ketosis helps to also destroy influenza. So that was a mouse study, and it helps these gamma theta T cells to actually destroy the virus. And ketones and the ketosis pathway activates the NRF2 hard words, which is also a regulatory mechanism related to autophagy.
Right. Another thing that's linked to this is NAD+. As you age, your NAD levels go down. NAD, which is produced in the Krebs cycle, is something that you want to upregulate through dietary means, especially as you age. It becomes increasingly important, and it has been linked. Low levels of NAD has been linked to DNA damage, to telomere attrition, to epigenetic alterations, and mitochondrial dysfunction. Many things. Basically, speeding up aging. All the different mechanisms through which you can maybe extend lifespans is also actually increasing your protection against pathogens and reducing your risk of getting serious complications from disease. And
Siim Land has also tremendous videos on his YouTube channel about the NAD and how you can increase that. I would like to, there are a few good questions. Can one take vitamins and minerals when fasting? Minerals, definitely. Vitamins, we don't necessarily know if they activate certain metabolic pathways that might inhibit the autophagic process. But we have in the book, in the flu guide, I actually consulted you on the recipe, the autophagy activator. So there are multiple herbs that actually promote autophagy. So water fasting is of course the best way to activate autophagy, but you can also boost it with different kind of herbs. So maybe Jaakko want to share a few of these. What
and
could
I think
work?
The jury is still out how small amounts of caffeine and this and that, and I don't think anybody knows yet fully. And my point is that probably not the biggest thing ever if you break it a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you really want to kind of get the cellular response, I'd say that many of the spices are pretty much at the core of boosting the effects of these cleanup mechanisms. And of course then there are things like cold exposure is really good for also same cellular mechanisms, but in general, let's say that spices, and of course from the spices you'd pick, turmeric and ginger and, black pepper, and many of these pretty widely available master spices are really good.
Many of these things are linked to lowering your basically your exposure to oxidative stress, so reducing reactive oxygen species. And we mentioned earlier glutathione as one of those means, glutathione and N-acetylcysteine as means of reducing oxidative stress, so giving your body the resources to scavenge those highly reactive oxygen species. And one of the things that is a key component in the production of glutathione is selenium. And selenium, we have here super selenium complex with vitamin E from Life Extension. And you can also just take 2 or 3 Brazil nuts. It has enough selenium specifically. And there's many different sources of selenium in the plant kingdom, including broccoli and eggs, and also garlic as well as onions are great sources for these minerals, as well as organ meats and so on. But selenium is very important once you see that you have a disease going on in your system. So if you're deficient of selenium, your body doesn't. It's basically one of the rate limiting factors in the production of glutathione.
Yeah. And I can reflect on from my doctor's office, and so I used to measure selenium quite a bit, and the reference rate it's quite wide, but people constantly had on the lower side and even below the normal range. So it might be wise to actually supplement yourself especially if you're getting a lot of infections and you feel that there's a lot of oxidative stress in your body. The selenium is one of the most important factors, and this is actually what I used also in my doctor's appointment. So this super selenium complex, it consists of 3 different forms. So there's selenometal L-selenocysteine, selenopure, and which is the L-selenomethionine and sodium selenite. So all these forms have a kind of a little bit different function, so you get a good mixture and combination of different forms of selenium. So this is the go-to product in my opinion. Of course, Brazil nuts, I usually eat them like maybe three per day, and I think Jaakko does too. So
Yeah, you don't have to eat them every day. And
Yeah.
of course, there's a problem of moldy nuts. So just if you can get a good Brazil nuts, eat a handful here and there, and you should be set up.
fooding.
For example,
Talking about other source of selenium and sulfur-containing compounds, we can look at garlic and onions. Garlic is a natural antibiotic and antimicrobial agent that kills viruses directly and strengthens the immune system in multiple different ways, according to the studies. And black garlic might be even stronger version.
What on earth is black garlic?
it's basically fermented garlic. And if I think about this, is actually funny. Oftentimes when I go to remote destinations, it's kind of a mirror for myself. Like, what do I actually believe in? Like, what do I take with me to some weird jungle trip? And definitely, like garlic extracts.
Yeah.
They are the shit. Like,
Garlic and
I
hallucins.
definitely love those kinds of things when you want to fight, kind of have the general weapons against certain things, but definitely fermented garlic and garlic as in raw form and all of these extracts are really high on my list when it comes to different herbs.
So folk medicine in terms of using garlic against vampires works.
Bad spirits away.
But it's a really good antibiotic for many weird strains and things that certain medicines don't work. So it's a cool herb.
Another pretty good antibiotic is oil of oregano.
Very strong one. You can totally overdose that, so poison is in the dose, and it's usually a few drops. Categorically, if you have oregano oil, it's 10 drops, but always make sure that you don't take too much. I've experienced a bit too much oregano oil, and it's actually burning inside, but it's very strong. Also, it might destroy good bacteria in the gut, so you don't want to overdo that too much. So it's always kind of a silver lining in there. So the dose is very critical.
Correct. And there is a question from Macho. Would you be able to draft a monthly budget on how much it would cost to take all those supplements? Sounds like a lot. Now, the thing here is that what we are listing here are things and measures that you want to take when there is an epidemic, things that you want to take if you contract an infection. Now, I don't recommend people to take oregano oil and garlic every single day.
No.
You actually want to have a little break of boosting your immune system in different ways. So most of the natural stuff is free anyway, like exercise and cold exposure and sauna and sunlight.
Those are like the first line of defense. But if you think about this, supplements, you can think that okay, let's take one bottle of these and kind of like have a good punch for the immune system, that it's upregulating systems there. Of course, if you have chronic problems, you might want to go with different stuff. So there are different kind of levels that we go through the guide. Correct. And there are like the first line aid, and it's different if you take like vitamin D or like liposomal glutathione. So for example, I don't take liposomal glutathione because I know I have high glutathione levels because I've measured them, but many don't have, and then it's the best form period to actually increase your levels.
Navreed Josen is asking if it's okay to take an ice bath when one has a cold. Now, the studies that I read about cold and heat exposure is that most of the benefits come before you get the cold. If you do that when your immune system is already weak, I mean, it's not going to help that much.
No, and the rationale would be that you want to actually have a fever, so don't go to cold, go to sauna rather. Of course, you don't want to go like too overboard in there, but actually a kind of mild sauna exposure is a good
so
thing.
If you've been fighting an infection for a couple of weeks and you haven't had fever yet, maybe a little sauna might be a good idea,
because it raises the core temperature. It's kind of a fever-like effects.
Don't do this if you have pneumonia, because potential risk
or chronic disease or chronic medications. So well, just a disclaimer.
We are not doctors. Well, we have one.
You are not.
and back to the point on the supplements. Even though I've had all of this stuff on my shelf, I wouldn't take all of them. Like these are just options, and you can do the whole stack if you're that type of person. But point being that even if you do a few of these, it's
indeed very good point. Yeah.
Looking at the time, we started maybe 20-30 minutes late, so we have still maybe 20-30 minutes of this webinar for 2 hours. So let's move on.
A lot of stuff still.
Let's look at some free options. So raw honey, good old folk medicine, according to studies, actually is pretty good as a cough medicine, as a cough medicine.
Couch medicine.
Not couch medicine.
Well, you can use as a couch
medicine.
Ingest some
you fall asleep taking all the carbohydrates in, but it has antimicrobial peptides, so don't heat it up if you want to have those benefits. And it has shown to be useful. In
my daughter, she wants this specific honey from Biohacker. She doesn't want any other honey. We have tried like different kind. No, I want that with the house in that, and it's specific wild honey from Biohacker. So she takes 1 or 2 teaspoons every day, and she is super healthy. But caveat here is not for under 1 year old because of an increased risk of botulism. I think that's an old thing, but just to make sure. But honey, one of the best.
Now we have probably a lot of. I mean, you have something.
I would just add that if you can get your hands into propolis, which is even kind of from the bee products, the thing that the bees produce to. Basically make a shield around their house. It's propolis, which means kind of, against their city. So that's their way of producing antiviral and antimicrobial paste. So that's definitely oftentimes in a spray form what I use if I have any type of respiratory system.
Especially sore throat, like alcohol, kind of tincture of propolis.
And then a little bit of honey to moisten your.
Right. Yeah. One question probably in the mind of several people in the audience who are doing the ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting is that, should you limit yourself from carbohydrates is one question. And another one is, should you fast when you're feeling that you're getting sick or when you're sick? So what's your opinion, Olli?
Depends. We know that for normal like viruses, ketosis doesn't have that much effect, although it prevented influenza in mice. But for bacterial infections, it's actually really helpful because of the metabolism, and there's not that much glucose available from food. But I wouldn't make like drastic changes just to get rid of the disease, but this is more like overall lifestyle and diet changes. So there's no like miracle cure that if you get a disease and suddenly you go to like different kind of diet, it might actually get it worse, especially if you are used to having a lot of carbohydrates and you suddenly go into ketogenic state. It creates a lot of electrical imbalances and so on. But all the things that we have discussed here have more effect on that.
Right. I did check some studies that show that the reason why people don't feel like eating when they're sick, there might be actually a physiological reason why that is a really good idea, that you're not clogging your system with food and you give the system time to actually fight the pathogens and not things that are in the bloodstream.
That's also what I mentioned like earlier with children. They don't want to eat animals. They don't usually want to eat. So it's a kind of a natural tendency.
So listen to your body. Now, another almost free, I mean, at least cheap, instead of supplements, is to use different things that boost your nitric oxide production. So NO boosters. You can have supplements like L-arginine or L-citrulline, but you can also get those from beets and dark leafy greens like rucola or kale, and certain nuts like almonds are actually pretty good also. Those may inhibit viral replication cycles. For example, the SARS coronavirus has been noted in some of those studies. Now, nitric oxide is pretty important for what reason?
Dilates the blood vessels and keeps them basically open. So that's no. I remember from medical school, there's like no news is good news.
Right.
That was when the nitric oxide was like a hot thing back in there.
So things that improve oxygen intake are also beneficial for fighting infections.
Blood flow, and it's all about energy and getting the right stuff to the right place.
Now we're getting to the territory of Jaakko for sure. I mean, you're producing all these weird like cocktails with all kinds of bitter herbs. So here we have licorice and we have ginseng roots, and we mentioned medicinal mushrooms. Now there are studies that show that they are potent inhibitors of viruses like influenza and stimulants to the immune system as well. So what is your kind of favorite go-to recipe in winter time, for example, and why?
Yeah, I think it boils down to what's pragmatic, what's convenient. So for me, for years, it's been this brew of different things on my stove. And it's, chaga, ginger, licorice, cinnamon goes there every now and then. I like to play a lot with spices because, again, that's pragmatic. Because, I've shown people, slides of ginger root, and then, you ask actually like how many of you have ever taken any type of ginger supplement, and there's like one hand. So it's again that it's not what we should do, but what people will actually do. And for many pragmatic reasons, I think that when it's not about supplements that are just that you can, easily take them, when it comes to whole plants and whole herbs, then it boils down to like, what's your user interface? And I think that the medicinal mushroom revolution, so to say, is widely spread on the thesis that it's pretty easy for you to boil this liquid brew and use that as a base for your chocolate drink, or make that bone broth using that as a base, or just use it pretty easily. So for the past decade now, it's been pretty much chaga tea base with different, spices and herbs around it, just because I can do that every day.
We have in the book, we have a few recipes that people may want to take a look at. There is the Brilliant Broth Bomb, which is basically based on bone broth. If you're a vegan, you can also use a vegetable broth in this. And basically we have all these things like turmeric, dried medicinal herbs like thyme and rosemary and cloves and oregano, and also beetroots that we mentioned earlier, as well as some black garlic gloves. So combining some of these things and maybe throwing in and emptying a capsule of L-glutamine in the brew, you have pretty good brewing to confiscate all those viruses in your system. Now, looking at the autophagy activator, this is something that supports autophagy. So you're basically stimulating the different pathways that are related to autophagy, like AMPK, with medicinal herbs once again. So we also have spirulina in this recipe.
This is Siim's recipe, and he actually does this, and he advised me that you take just 1 teaspoon daily, and you can actually use it when fasting. And everybody asks, does this interrupt the fast? It's not like either or. It's a different kind of degrees, and you shouldn't think so black and white. So adding these to your regime is
and I think
helpful.
It boils down to the amount of protein. When you get amino acids, you basically activate the mTOR and all the building mechanisms, and these are not very high.
No, and specifically, it's not just about any amino acid, but about leucine.
Yes.
Leucine has also an insulin response. So if you just reduce the leucine content and put it into zero, it's not having really that much effect. So you can use it, for example, collagen. And what I have here, this is what I did in the morning, and I still have some fatty coffee with some collagen, but I microdose it throughout the day, and I know this is not having any significant effect on the autophagy.
Right. So you can also use a beverage like coffee as a carrier for medicinal mushrooms and several different herbs.
Perhaps technological.
Yeah, we jump into it in a second. I just mentioned very quickly elderberry juice. So studies have also shown that all these dark berries are beneficial, and elderberry extract specifically has been studied to relieve the symptoms on average 4 days earlier than without taking.
That is seljanmarja.
Seljanmarja, correct. Now, a few lifestyle interventions that we highly recommend you to do is to quit smoking. If you do smoke, if you smoke cannabis, maybe stop burning it and use other methods. But anyway, the coronaviruses use the ACE2 receptor, specifically the novel coronavirus, and there is a lot of studies that came out. There is also a recent article on Nature magazine that verifies the ACE2 receptor, and ACE2 receptor expression is increased if you smoke. ACE2 receptor expression is also increased perhaps potentially in Asian populations and people who are so-called Denisovan heritage of Aboriginal man. We here as Europeans, we are actually Neanderthal. Neanderthal humans. We're not Denisovans, but Denisovans seem to have higher ACE2 expression. People like that might be actually pretty good at high altitude to get better oxygen. It could be that when you smoke cigarettes, your lungs are kind of upregulating the things to get the oxygen into the system. So you also get other things more readily to the system, like viruses. Smoking increases the risk for coronavirus. Now, other thing that increase your risk for, especially for complications, is environmental pollution. Especially cadmium has shown to disrupt mitochondrial function and potentiate pulmonary inflammation in animal studies, probably also humans. So you might wonder why the death rate is so high in all those polluted cities right now in China, but outside of China, very little death rate so far. But I mean, this will play out and we'll see. But now is a good reason to move to the countryside or to Finland. We welcome everyone to Finland. We have Biohacker Summit 16 and 17 of October. You're welcome to Finland and see the fresh air, taste, the dark winter blues and all that. But in the end, it's going to make you resilient and more ready to live a long life. Stop consuming alcohol. I'm good. I'm not the best person to say that right now, but...
Or perhaps microdose alcohol.
I'm microdosing Corona
in the form of tinctures, because there is alcohol in there.
Tinctures are a good way to microdose alcohol, but it has shown actually in some studies to work as a kind of a immune system stimulant in small amounts. And maybe folk medicine of using gin and Jägermeister and so on, like there is some truth.
Cognac. Yeah, the different effects, but it's always the dose. Like a grandmom's daily dose of small dose of cognac might be actually a good thing. Yeah, so.
Now there has been probably 20 questions about Tylenol, paracetamol, NSAIDs, acetaminophen, etc. So, Olli, what is your take on it? What doesn't work based on studies?
Yeah, so that's what we went through in the flu guide also. So we talked about fever earlier here. So if you think logically that you suppress the fever all the time, it's actually making your system harder to get rid of the virus or the pathogen. And that's also been like researched. And paracetamol has been shown to increase the duration of colds because it reduces natural antibody response. NSAIDs, of course, they diminish pain and they're kind of symptomatic treatments, but they may impair the normal immune system function, and especially people with pneumonia shouldn't use any NSAIDs. So these are not really helping you to recover from there. But of course, I understand that if you're in a lot of pain, it's also diminishing the stress and it's psychologically relieving. But it's not a cure for anything.
Right. So when you get something like influenza and you feel pain in your muscles and bones around your body, those are actually your immune system cells doing their work. So interference are linked to feeling, the aches and pains in your body, and that's actually it's an effect you want. Also, sometimes like sneezing and so on is a physical kind of mechanical way through which the body is extracting
coughing for sure.
Cough medicines. I go to the couch right away. So that is actually a good response to get rid of the pathogen. Also, higher fever is getting rid of it. So if you dampen any of these reactions, like sneezing or coughing or fever or aches around your body, you're actually dampening your immune system response to the pathogen. So that's why the duration of the cold might be increased. You feel a little bit better, but it's an illusion actually.
Yeah. So I can here share my favorite kind of rinsing method. It's not this normal what's in English, neti-pot. Yeah, but it's actually a strong jet from Physiomer which has this like in the words, but it has like a seawater which is isotonic, and it comes from like a super hard pressure, and it's designed to really like rinse the whole system. So if you keep it doing and you have chronic like sinusitis problems, you may actually prevent them like from happening. So keeping your sinuses clean with this isotonic water. It's a strong jet, Physiomer.
Right. Once again as a preparation, amazingly good, and also helping your body to extract pathogens like nose scans from good yoga practices might be also useful. So
but they're not creating the pressure you want. I play with this also quite a bit, but this is by far the most advanced and effective way of really cleansing the sinuses.
Let's look at technology and technological tools. So one thing we mentioned earlier was ultraviolet light for killing pathogens. Now we can move to red light, infrared, red light, and blue light, and those have shown, according to studies, to be extremely helpful for eradicating pathogens, slowing down the proliferation of viruses in your cells, as well as help your cells actually to ramp up the defense mechanisms.
Yeah, one of the key things here is to reduce formation of these like free radicals and reducing the oxidative stress. and also improving like overall energy production. So if your immune system cells do not have enough energy, they're not going to be functioning that well. So I've been using like personally red light, infrared light therapy for many years, and I like I've kind of gravitated towards that. If I feel something in the respiratory area, I get like a 5-minute dose of red light and infrared light. So, and it feels really good. And this is something I've also had reported by many people. So the easiest way is to use this Biohacker's red light panel, which we also have at home.
Yeah. We also have the Vialight intranasal device. It's not here right now, but it's on the store.
Yeah, you can use 650 nanometers, the Vialight intranasal light. So there's in the guide also researched that intranasal, it goes into the whole systematic circulation, and it's kind of putting like laser light intravenously, and it certainly has an effect on the immune system.
Right. So one thing that I noticed when I got like some flu symptoms that went away once I did all these supplements here was that the pain associated with it that started coming on like completely disappeared with red light. And I'll just turn this device on now. So this is the red light specifically. Whoa, that's really waking me up here.
This area is infected.
I really need these glasses now, so let's put on some glasses. So
you look cool, man.
So this one is actually now the infrared light. It's as strong as the red light you just saw, but you can see it because it's outside of the visible range of light. Now if I turn the red light on as well, you can see that, and maybe 10-15 minutes
max
at 5 to 10 minutes distance. That's how you get the
10-minute distance. That's
ideal dose.
Yeah, distance about 10 centimeters, and why it's wiser to have both red light and infrared lights is the penetration depth to the tissue. So the infrared goes a bit deeper, and the red light it's more superficial. So
So here you see the red light panel. It has 810 nanometer near infrared lights as well as
850.
850 and
660 red light.
660 is the red light, and you have controls for it. It's pretty easy also to travel with. It's a huge unit.
It weighs 4 kilos. You can actually also put it in the ceiling if you want to have. That's how we usually have in our office. So it's kind of like a recovery station.
Just when I arrived here, I was thinking about like, well, damn, I get to have that.
You get
just 15 minutes on that. It's recharges definitely.
Yeah, Vialight is an intranasal device that you stick up your nostrils, and that can actually certainly help also reduce viral replication on the cell membranes. There's no direct studies on this, I have to mention, but actually indirectly looking at the studies in petri dishes, like how it slows down replication of viruses, probably it also works.
There are actually a few studies on the intranasal administration of the light that I actually dig. So it's in the flu guide. You can.
Is that for viral infections?
It was just overall immune function, but most of the research is preliminary. But the thing is here that it doesn't cause any side effects. So that's also There is like more than 4,000 studies right now on PubMed on photobiomodulation.
Yeah. And it's a form of live medicine that works, and it's clinically used here in Finland for speeding up wound healing in diabetic patients.
For example,
Yeah. Another thing in terms of technology that I would look at is filtering water, especially if you live in locations where the water might not be of high quality. So we have EcoFilter here. Another thing that we want to mention is the O-ring. So let's take this thing off. So I have the Oura Ring here, and what I've noticed is that if you're getting, let's say, a food poisoning or a bacterial infection, you see that your nightly heart rate variability goes to 0, often already before you get like any serious symptoms. So you may want to track changes in resting heart rate throughout the night. So if that goes up 15, 20 points or beats, or if you see heart rate variability dropping, flooring basically, there might be something specifically going on.
Yeah, we have actually a specific slides on this.
Where?
It's in the end.
Okay.
So there's some measurement stuff. So about heart rate variability, you can totally see a trend, like a lower trend on there. It doesn't necessarily go to 0, but it's more like a flat line. So yeah, elevated heart rate, resting heart rate, stuff like that. Of course, you can have like a CRP measurement. If it's clearly over 30, you might want to go to the doctor. Apparently, I didn't have that slide there.
Yeah, it's not here.
Okay.
So
well, it's in the book. Anyhow.
It's in the book anyway. So tracking your Oura Ring is good for optimizing your sleep, and in addition, also to detect potential infection before you get symptoms. And that's when you want to start dosing vitamin D3, vitamin C, as well as zinc, maybe selenium, beta-glucans, medicinal mushrooms, because the window is in the very beginning of the infection.
Yeah.
So it's good to detect that before you get serious symptoms.
Also from Oura, what you don't get from other measurement devices is the temperature. So you might see a little bit of change, maybe elevated body temperature, and actually giving you signals that it's elevated, and you can clearly see there if you have like a fever spike. I've had a couple of times, like maybe 2 times these past 3 years I've used the Oura Ring. One was like a norovirus infection, which was like horrible, but I had like a fever spike, 2.5 degrees, and it like completely destroyed the virus and got rid of it. But you can see from there, and females can see from there like ovulation phase and also approaching menstruation.
Another thing I think is important in terms of the data is that if you've been sick, like I got food poisoning in India, and it was away in 24 hours, but you can see when your system is fully recovered.
Yeah.
So you can actually see, you feel pretty fine, but it can be a week after an incident like this when your system is still fighting something and it's a week.
True.
So melatonin is something that people take for sleep optimization. And melatonin has shown to be good for helping T helper cells in their production, particularly the CD4 plus cells. I wouldn't advise taking melatonin every single night if you get a full night's sleep, and the reason is that it also impairs glucose metabolism and insulin release, specifically in the morning. So
in certain population, about 30%.
Yes.
Doesn't do it for everybody. And if you microdose melatonin, let's say like 0.1 milligrams, it's a go, even if you use it like all the time. So it could be actually a good tool for improving your immune system, like microdosing melatonin.
People macrodose on melatonin, and even in those people who have less of melatonin receptors in the pancreatic cells, they can also get this glucose response by taking too much melatonin.
Sure.
So what we are talking about in terms of differences in population is the people who have higher susceptibility of having melatonin receptors in the pancreas, and those are highly sensitive to pretty regular doses of melatonin, like 1 milligram even might be actually 10 times too much. So check your genetics if you are interested in optimizing your melatonin intake. Now, a lot of people are traveling as we speak, and we would highly recommend you to actually avoid queues in the airport. Actually, the highest likelihood of contracting a disease is not on the airplane, but it's actually while you're waiting to get inside one. And so airports and different ports are harboring all kinds of pathogens. I would, avoid the stress and the cues by different measures of getting frequent flyer status, avoid check-in bags, handling and dealing with those things, and just pack what you really need. You can also choose the airport and airline accordingly and avoid Friday afternoons. Now, when you get to the airplane, I think for a flight, zinc acetate is a really good preventive measure because it inhibits viral replication on your mucous membranes.
And
So
it's actually good. I can actually show you this. So it's this size of a tablet. So it's about 30 minutes. So once you wait your that to go to the airplane, you can just chew on this, and it's kind of a protection for yourself, for your immune system. So
Yeah.
I grab a few of these.
Correct.
Want some?
Once you're on the
Pretty good.
once you're on the airport, wash your hands immediately after security. The most unhygienic thing is the tray, where you put all your stuff, and those have multiple times more pathogens than the toilets, for example, at the airport. So you don't want to touch your face after going through the security. That's
Wash
one
your hands
measure.
immediately.
Immediately. When you're on an airplane specifically, drink more water from your own bottle. So that's a recommendation, because dehydration, which is particularly typical in airplanes, is faster than on ground, and the moisture in your nasal hairs helps you to filter out pathogens. There is also technologies like the humidifier that uses your own breathing to increase the humidity that you get. Okay, we spoke already about these things, but when you are in the airplane, avoid aisle seats. That's where people put most of their hands all the time.
What if you have a long leg? I usually always sit in the aisle.
Yeah, I know.
But,
maybe an exit row is a good idea.
Should I wear a mask?
Yeah, we'll get to the mask topic in a moment, but specifically avoid being close to lavatories and toilets, and maybe go for business class. There's less people in there. The highest vector of transmitting the disease is actually the flight personnel, as well as the people
Let's remove the flight personnel.
immediately next to you or in front of you. Now, if you look at the toilet specifically, around 50% of the whole, airplane, the people on the plane, they go to the toilet, and 9% go twice, and 3% go even more often. If you use the toilet, avoid touching any surfaces and wash your hands. Use the paper towels.
I'm pretty amazed about the stats, because I go to the toilet like all the time, and I feel like the air pressure and all the things that actually make me urine more. So it's kind of like a trade-off. I think the most wisest thing to do is just avoiding touching like these parts that potentially have pathogens.
Yeah.
But,
and it can be that actually your seat is more problematic than the toilet itself in terms of hygiene.
Yeah.
So if you look at the seat buckle, that is a part that everyone touches. They need to touch it. So you may want to disinfect one of those things. So, I don't use much of these alcohol wipes, but using something like this on the different buttons that you're going to be pressing on the screen, on the buckle itself, and especially your phone. So a lot of people, when they go to the toilet, they wash their hands, but they don't really wash their phone. So the phone becomes a vector of transmitting diseases. So using the wipe on your phone is a really, really good idea specifically. And also, if you get really hardcore paranoid, you may want to also disinfect your seat. And one of the most problematic parts of your seat is actually the tray in which you have all the food. And here is a cool technology, airplane pockets. So this is a pocket that covers the tray, and you can eat food from the tray after this just fine. And one part that I would avoid is actually putting any food inside the pocket or reading any of those magazines in there, those can harbor all kinds of pathogens. There's studies that show that those are some of the highly microbially active parts of your seat. Now, if you are super paranoid, you may want to also cover your whole seat. But getting too crazy about this is not really that important. If you are afraid of the air inside the airplane, now airplanes were, the air quality was a big problem when people were smoking on airplanes, and they really improved the air circulation in modern airplanes, and most of the air goes out from the sides, right next to the windows, and comes through from the air conditioning above you. Now, some people, they turn off the air conditioning because they are afraid that it's now blowing all the viruses on your face, but actually that air is clean, going through multiple HEPA filtrations per minute, and it kind of creates a bubble once again around you when you face or direct the airflow to your face.
Yeah, we are living on a bubble.
I have this thing also that creates the bubble in the airplane, and the bubble from the above.
This was actually news to me, because I think many people actually think that the air quality in airplanes is bad, and you should avoid using these, but actually you want to use them, so it's interesting facts.
Yeah. What are, Jaakko, your travel hacks when you're on an airplane? Do you lick all the surfaces just to get as much bacterial
Correct.
exposure?
Yeah, I don't do anything that fancy. I just, probably just, noise cancelling headphones and fasting, and that's about it.
You do any batches?
Yeah, and I actually almost dry fast. It's weird. Over the years, I've come into the conclusion that I don't kind of overhydrate when flying, even though it's probably good, but there's something for me personally. I don't do that much liquids when flying.
Right.
There's something into it.
Now looking at air filtration technologies, now the device that I showed in the beginning of the show, this device is called AO PhaseWear. It's one of the most advanced technologies on the market. So these turbines are actually house some nano technology that basically filters out bacteria and viruses and microparticles that get into your airways. And I can turn this thing also on. It works. Here we go.
Right, that's cool lights.
Yeah, so you have lights that basically signal to the surrounding how the air quality is, and you just put this on your face and you're good to go. I sometimes use this on airplanes and no one looks at me. They think they avoid eye contact after that.
Why is there different lights?
Those lights are signaling the air quality in the surroundings. So there is sensors.
Yeah.
And this is the prototype version. They are coming out with an updated version of this soon. We will be sending out information when the pre-order is available on this one. As well as we will be carrying some photocatalysis devices soon also on our store. But yeah, you can do a lot of nice things with personal protection here. One personal protection that I would definitely bring to a workplace is different essential oils that have shown to kill pathogens in the air. Now I have some here, for example. Let's see. Okay.
Essential oils.
So put some water in here. Not etheric, but essential oils. So we have some thyme here, some rosemary,
Good one.
ethereal oils. And those are antibacterial, antiviral properties on airborne viruses and bacteria. So this is something that you want to have on your home if you have a sick person, as well as at the workplace if someone is sneezing. So some protection here. It's not just, some woo-woo, new age, hippie yoga stuff to use essential oils, but it's actually something that's beneficial for protecting yourself.
One thing you could do is, if you have an air humidifier in the bedroom to keep it moisture, you can add a few drops, let's say lavender, which is really calming down, but also some other thyme if you feel that you need some extra help while you're sleeping. So
if you get super paranoid about contracting a virus, maybe you're treating a relative who is sick or something, the viruses also get through your eyes into your system. So covering your face is not necessarily enough, but also covering your eyes is a good idea. Now, if you put a gas mask and go on an airplane, you're pretty sure to be caught as a terrorist. So we don't recommend doing any of that. And I've seen, people using swimming goggles on airports, and it's a bit funny, what is the real risk here? But this lady here is actually doing it the right way. She's avoiding the crowd. So she probably doesn't need the goggles.
She's being informed that this is was actually from our trip to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
From the plane, so...
Yeah, that was pretty
Secret
cool.
photos.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, swimming goggles. Actually, these kind of goggles originally have been developed for people who have pretty dry eyes in airplanes, so to increase humidity. But if you're really paranoid, maybe you want to use that. Now, about face masks. Face masks are most useful if you give the mask to someone who is actually sick. So on yourself, there is less of opportunity. But if you want to avoid that person contaminating everyone else, like give the mask to that person instead of yourself. Yeah. So that's a high recommendation. Now, in terms of the filtration technologies specifically, this mask here is the certification is FFP3. FFP3 is basically 99% filtration, so it's also called N99. There's also FFP2, which is basically the so-called N95 masks. Now the problem with N95 masks, which are all over media that people want to buy and get their hands on, is that coronavirus goes through N95 masks. So, but if you use one of these devices, go for an N99. And one recommendation of using these things is that when you breathe, all the air comes to this device. So if there is a virus, it's going to be on the mask. So you don't want to touch the mask here to take it off, but use from the sides and wash your hands before you touch your face after taking the mask off, because these things can be problematic.
There's a question if are regular face masks that are not N95 of any use?
It's better than nothing, especially for someone who is sick. But in the end,
they're really not stopping any viruses.
No, I think the best way to stop a virus really is all the precautions you can do in terms of health beforehand, as well as boosting your immune system with different things if you contract it. But in the end, these things, they lurk in wondrous ways. But definitely washing your hands, not touching your face, avoid, touching things on public places like door knobs and elevator buttons and so on. In times of epidemic. Outside of an epidemic, you should do it, definitely, to expose yourself to as much bacteria as possible.
Yeah, so here's that's kind of a list from what you should do. We have gone through these quite a bit. So just avoid touching places that are likely to be touched by many people and likely vectors of viruses in particular. But we can go. You can go through this in the flu guide. Always use contactless payment if possible. Avoid this basic fiat money, coins, so on.
Apple Pay.
Yeah, wash with soap. That's more effective than disinfectants, and definitely avoid dryers because they will spread all the germs out there, and it's kind of a massive place for getting stuff there. So yeah, what's happening now?
Yeah, klikkaa sitä zoomia, press zoom, turn it on if it's off. Yeah, so what we really do recommend is that you take all the precautions you can when there is an epidemic, but don't get too crazy about disinfecting all surfaces and using gloves and face masks and all that. for too long periods of time, because you actually need exposure to bacteria and viruses. You don't want to end up like Michael Jackson in some kind of air capsule.
I have a funny story. I think they in Asia, where they grow a lot of mushrooms, they have a limit of like 2 to 4 hours that you can spend on those labs, because they are completely sterile, and that's so unhealthy. That's just a few hours a day, and you need to get exposed.
So about self-quantification, signs of disease, we actually went through these for a bit. About laboratory tests, so if you think that you may have an infection, taking like the CRP test is one way to get to really understand it. Of course, some additional lab tests that can be done in virtually every lab is possible nowadays without even like prescription or whatnot from the doctor. So you can actually find out yourself also. And this is also the point that this guy called Mikko brought out, that if we, because of fear, start like really going to the doctor like all the time and to the ERs, so that the system won't handle that. So be prepared yourself, and if you want to measure something, you can do it actually yourself. So yeah, everything working again. So I think we are approaching to the end.
We
of
do
this
definitely
marathon.
Yeah, it's been a long webinar, but there's a few questions that I think we really need to answer.
Sure.
And there's several questions about Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Well, it's been researched, and actually we have referenced that in our book, the Biohacker's Handbook, about it. It actually upregulates certain immune cells and actually helps the immune system function well. So I think it's a good hack or good tool to improve your immunity.
Right.
Yeah.
And it can be helpful in the beginning of the infection. So I think some of the studies with the Wim Hof method that Wim Hof did with a group of people was basically to prevent getting sick from a deliberate contamination.
They were actually measuring different kind of interleukins, and then they saw that it was an upregulation of certain, I don't recall what they were, and also they were getting like increased response in noradrenaline and cortisol, which are actually a good thing in early infection points. So it might be helpful. Yeah.
Let's go really quickly through self-quantification. So if you can give us as a quick like walkthrough, like what to look for to figure out if you're sick.
This is actually something we already went through, I think, but
here's the
as a
specific
conclusion,
numbers.
elevate body temperature, especially if it's 1 degree Celsius, daily heart rate, even like 10 beats. If it's chronically elevated by 10 beats, you might want to reconsider if there's like a viral infection. The HRV part we went through. Respiratory rate is a good measurement also. Over 30 is already like significant. So these are kind of markers I pull off from one research paper that you definitely should go to the hospital, because these might be signs of pneumonia.
Right.
If you go to the next slide, I think there are like some self-quantification labs. So again, CRP, complete complete blood count, especially the white blood cell count, and the differential. So you can actually see whether it's like neutrophils or other cells in there. Polymorphonuclear leukocyte count, good one. IL-6,
Yeah. How about like nutritional deficiencies? Like we have this online course on shopbiohackercenter.com where you can basically order a pretty thorough test in your local lab, and then with the course you can interpret the results yourself, so you can figure out if you are basically lacking in some parts of your system that might make you more susceptible.
Yeah, and also
infections.
basic metabolism and vitamin D for sure, folate, and so on. So I have done this course just to help people to understand if they self-quantificate and do own laboratory tests so that they get the most of them. So please welcome and join the course if you really like to understand better the values.
Right. Yeah. I think we have, most of these things on the table right now. If you want to learn more, check our books, the Biohacker's Handbook. It's shipping globally from our store at shop.biohackercenter.com. Siim launched book Metabolic Autophagy goes into the different ways how you can activate autophagy and help your body to get rid of damaged cells. And the Optimize Your Lab Results test we just mentioned, and there's also the Biohacker's Invisible Immunity Guide that goes deeper into it. We will be sending out the Biohacker's Flu Guide, or over 50 pages, 60 pages total with references, which go through in very detail, much more than what we were able to cover in this webinar. How you can protect yourself from viral and bacterial infections, what have the highest efficacy that are out there, busting some myths. We definitely recommend you to check out some of those things. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us for the Biohacker's Flu webinar. It's live, and sorry for a few technical hiccups and starting late, but we'll be editing this down and sending over a summary as well as the material, so you can take a second look if you missed something. And definitely follow Biohacker Summit and Biohacker's Handbook on social media, on Instagram. If you check at biohackingbook.com, if you check biohackingbook on Instagram, if you go to biohackingbook.com, you can find our book, and biohackersummit.com, you can find our future conference coming up in Amsterdam on 5 and 6 of June, as well as 16 and 17 of October in Helsinki. These times are a really, really good reason for you to become more aware of your own health, because most of the stuff that we researched actually pointed towards healthy lifestyle. So if you fix your sleep, your recovery, your exercise, your nutrition, your nutritional deficiencies, you protect yourself with technological and biological means, you will be less likely to contract a disease, and if you do, it will not proliferate as quickly in your system or doesn't end up with as high of a likelihood into serious complications. So with that, you don't have to be afraid. There is a lot of fear-mongering out there right now on media and on social media about the coronavirus. And our recommendation is to really look at the research and the facts and start doing the lifestyle changes you can do today. Stop smoking, drink less alcohol or use it in therapeutic doses. Fix the things that you feel you're not doing right in terms of your lifestyle now, and you will be more protected, right?
Yeah, this has been a marathon. I'm really grateful that we can share this knowledge that we have accumulated during the past decade or so, and just to help people to take lives in their own hands, and just to have more hope, but also more tools that you can improve your life, be more thriving, have a better lifespan, and overall better health. So a lot of stuff to incubate here, and more in the guide. So
yeah, we'll send the guide by email, and check shop.biohackercenter.com. There's all the curated products we are shipping internationally. So thank you very much for joining us today. And let's have some more Corona.
Jaakko has already sipped that a few hours ago.
my favorite.
Thank you very much.
My other favorite beverage is Ebola.
Yeah, that's in the morning.
With these jokes, we're out.
Yeah.
Uber and Corona.
Thank you very much.